Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tokusatsu Podcast, the best show about Tokusatsu you probably never heard of. That's Jay. But before Jay does his intro, we have a very special guest that we're going to be interviewing today, a man that goes by the name of Eric McEver. So please, sir, tell us who you are, what you do, and how you do it.
Well, hello everyone out there in the interwebs listening on your device of choice. Yes, my name is Eric McEver, and I guess I have worn many hats over the years. I'm here because I'm a screenwriter and a director, and I recently did the film Ike Boys, which is in many ways a love letter to all things Tokusatsu. But movies don't happen in a vacuum. Before that, I was a little boy who loved dinosaurs, and that led to a love of Godzilla, and that led to a desire to make a Godzilla film one day. And there's many years of stories there of moving to Japan and learning Japanese and learning filmmaking, which we can get to or not as the conversation continues. But yeah, that long, peculiar journey brought me here. So thank you for having me.
Well, it is great to have you, and of course, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the complete out of nowhere chance that Jay was able to get. Which Jay, give us a little bit of the skinny how this all came around.
Well, I'll delve into a little bit of how the sausage got made for this particular batch. So earlier this year, I had attended a local convention, Anime Boston. It's relatively big. I mean, it's not your Anime Expo or your Otakons or those are the only two big anime con. Oh, yeah, Sakura-con. Okay, it's not like as big as those, but it's pretty big anime convention. So I had intended to go half because I knew a couple of fans were going to the show, and half because I knew there was going to be a screening of this, and I had just seen that it listed on the what do they call it, the itinerary or whatever the word they use for panels. I had seen that it was listed for a show. I was like, oh, I saw the trailer for that a little while ago, and I've been meaning to sit down and watch it, so kill two birds with one stone. And it wasn't until I realized that you were actually going to be there where I had the idea of, hey, what if I, just as a complete hypothetical, throw that out to you if I ever get the chance? And you were there at the showing, obviously, and, I came up there at the end of the showing, said my piece, told you about how much I enjoyed the movie, and shot the question, and, well, here we go. AJ handled it all from there, pretty much. He did the booking. I was just the face man for this particular endeavor.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you did. Anime Boston was it was lovely. There's big and then there's big, but there were a lot of people there, and half of them were in really cool costumes, and yeah, they treated us to a really fun, punchy screening. Look, it was a wonderful event, and I had a great time. And the reason you do things like this, promoting a film, what that really means is connecting with people. So that's kind of the whole point, is to do things like this. Before we get to anything else, I actually got there's many stories to share from Anime Boston, but one of the ones that I think it might be most interesting and I found the most touching is, so I was wandering around looking at the guest lists and looking at some of the voice actors there, and I was like, wow, I recognize one of those names. So it was Brandon McGinnis, and so I actually went to Japanese school with Brandon.
Oh wow!
It's back in it would be 14 years ago now. We had both graduated from college, and we were in the Middlebury Japanese language school together. Both on the eve of going back to Japan. We had both been to Japan. I was going to pursue film-related things. He was going to pursue music. And just, really nice guy, studied Japanese together. I actually ended up helping him get his first full-time job in Japan.
Oh.
So we reconnected there, and then, life took us our separate ways, but it was really neat. We reconnected there, and it's like, we basically agreed, okay, it's been a decade and change. and we had a certain set of pretty big ambitions that we articulated when we met right after college, and we've essentially achieved a variant of them. It quote unquote worked out, and I don't know. That was just that was a very sweet moment. So there were a lot of good things that happened in Anime Boston.
That is very interesting. It's funny how it's one of those, again, chaos theory. It's one of those weird ways where life just kind of works out that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it's chaos theory, but it's also there's the entertainment industry. It never ceases to amaze me how small the entertainment industry is. It's just it's not even 6 degrees of separation. It's like 2 or 3 degrees at most. So
yeah, you're always kind of running into somebody that by complete accident, and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess they're here at the same time. That's really cool.
Yeah. So Boston was great.
So Jay, do you want to start off with your questions or with mine?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I kind of lumped all in a one big list. But yeah, I guess we can just take it from the top there. So you've already kind of gone a little bit about yourself, just kind of what your general day-to-day life is, Eric. But tell us a little bit.
My deal.
More or less, yeah. But how generally, what convinced you to sort of get into the entertainment industry? What was that spark that kicked you into this life journey that brought you to here? I guess is the fancy way of explaining it.
Yeah, well, it's a great question, and I think it comes down to I don't know, some mixture of naiveness and stubbornness. I mean, as with many small children, I daydreamed and I did drawings and I came up with stories. I actually wrote my first book before I knew how to read and write. I dictated it to my mother and then did the illustrations for it. And that actually turned into a 3-volume illustrated book series, culminating when I entered the first grade and realized how hard reading actually was. The point being, I mean, and of course, at the time it was, everyone said like, "Oh, you're so special." But I mean, honestly, I think that power and that drive is in most children, most people. I think we're all driven to create. We have ideas or come up with stories, and it comes out in different ways. And I think I didn't particularly think there was anything special about me, but I just kind of kept at it. I mean, I think it was around the age of 12 or 13 or so. I mean, 13 was when I wrote my first screenplay. And I think that was when I realized like, oh, okay, I'm keeping at this and other people around me are not keeping at it. And it's sort of an evolving process because, I mean, I made my first feature-length film when I was in high school, and I sort of took note of, although didn't really remark on the fact that like, okay, like I'm organized, like I'm conceiving of this, I'm organizing it, and there's plenty of talented, people around me, talented peers who actually, some of them I think are objectively more talented than I am, but they're not, they're just, they have these great ideas, but they're not organizing and doing it. And that's nothing against them. It's just not how they're put together. And just kind of kept from there. So like, there's a great quote from it's failing me. Pixar director did The Iron Giant.
Brad Bird,
yeah, I think it's from Brad Bird, but it's he says he talks about like loving all the different forms of art, but film is the one that allows him to play with all of the different forms of art. And I think that's really where I stuck with that one, because it's something where you don't have to choose. I mean, I love visual art. I mean, there's a daily painting blog that I follow, and I've dabbled in acting. Actually, that was my first job in Japan, was working as an actor. And I can't compose music, but I love music. And film is just something that allows me to play in all those sandboxes. And another way of putting it is, I mean, the thing that I really love about directing ultimately is that you're working with many different passionate people, and you're in a position to activate those passions and empower them to do the thing they love. And you get to learn about it, but you get to push people to really excel at the thing they care about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's honestly just kind of a process. But again, I mean, I think the desire to do that, I mean, it started out really, really young. And I think, I mean, I don't know, I had good parents, and I had a certain measure of, I don't know, naiveness that just prevented me from reaching that point where I was like, well, I guess I need to grow up and do a real job now.
I think everybody has that kind of moment at least once in their life.
Yeah, well, I've retroactively I've had that. Unfortunately, they've been retroactive. Of like, oh, healthcare. I do need to get that thing. Like. But fortunately, I'm still here kicking, and I don't know. I think mom and dad also gave me enough of a measure of responsibility to make the unfun stuff work too.
So, you kind of did touch on this earlier with your love of Godzilla, but I want to know, was being a Tokusatsu fan like just something that always was kind of in the background, or was that something that just became like stronger the older you got?
Yes and yes. It started out because dinosaurs were the first love. Again, as with many little kids, and the difference is that I just haven't outgrown my dinosaur phase. And so I was born in 1986, and when I was very young, there just weren't many dinosaur films around that my parents could show me. And even like when Jurassic Park came along, I mean, that's kind of bloody and spooky, and I was a bit of a sensitive child, so it was like, what are dinosaur films that are safe for Eric to see? And it's like, well, Godzilla films were what were available, and sort of little did mom and dad know. So it's something that I loved, but then there were more Godzilla films coming out, and it's like, once you got access to the internet and start digging there, it's like you start discovering the bigger world. And again, the stubbornness of not growing up, I just stayed interested in that bigger world, and that led to wanting to learn Japanese and really sort of go to the source. Always there. If you'll allow me to go out on a limb for a minute and get a little bit mystical about it, I mean, because of my interest in Tokusatsu, I've met some of my dearest friends, in Japan and in other places, and it's one of those things where there's no sort of like logical mathematical reason that I should have met any of these people and connected with them, but really, because if you trace it back at some level, because of Godzilla, because of Gamera, it's like I started down a path that led me to meeting people who are really dear in my life, and we've done things together. There's an emotional bond. So I do believe that there are larger forces at work in the universe, and I think Tokusatsu was a conduit that brought me where I needed to go. So I think in some mystical way, I think it's an outward manifestation of something deeper going on.
It is true, then. I do resonate with that sentiment, because I think I also like resonate with that, mostly because it's true, and I have felt that as well, where it's like, I think because of the love of Tokusatsu that Jay and I have kind of gotten to places that we never kind of thought we would in reality. Like, it's one of those things that because of that, it led to a lot of crazy moments in my and Jay's life. And as I mentioned earlier, since I'm a voice actor, I got to know people who have voiced in Tokusatsu productions like Power Rangers and such, and because of that, it's like, it's weird. It's weird how my love of these spandex-clad heroes turned into something that, like, oh wow, we're actually here doing something important. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, well, there's many examples I can give. I mean, some low-hanging fruit from Ike Boys is so the poster was done by Bob Eggleton, who I had loved Bob's art growing up. I mean, obviously he's done a lot of Godzilla, but there's plenty of just fantasy art and science fiction that I'd seen. I just he in my mind growing up, it was just like he was just one of those cool artists, and it just so it made sense to reach out to him to do the Ike Boys poster. So what I wasn't counting on was really connecting with him to the point that he and his wife were there at the screening in Boston. He's he's the older brother I never knew I had, and we're just very much on the same wavelength about a lot of things. I mean, not just Tokusatsu, and so it's kind of like, okay, like there is something bigger going on here, and I think I think I have as little ability to articulate what it is as any person does about the cosmic mysteries, but art brings people together. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
So going back a tiny little bit, you had touched on primarily, like you said, you're a screenwriter and now director, and you kind of touched on a tiny little bit of the other hats you've worn, but in a sort of general day-to-day vibe, what typically do you do? What do you usually do beyond screenwriting and directing, and what have you done that kind of led you up to this point? I think you kind of briefly mentioned doing a little bit of work with, I think, programming or video game work. I didn't quite catch 100%, but I know you had mentioned it before at another point.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think I'm what is known as a hyphenate, or maybe the other euphemism would be that I have a diverse resume. And I mean, another way of putting that is that it's just there's really no way to just there are very few paths to just tell stories and fully make a living from that. Or at least certainly when you're starting out, fortunately you get more and more opportunities the further along you get. And I've been very blessed that way. So my first professional opportunity in Japan was as a theater actor. Mm-hmm. I got cast in an adaptation of Hamlet. Hamlet, there's the play within the play. So the play I went on tour, it was really neat. It was a tour of no theaters, so NOH. And the main actors were all Japanese. They were professional No and Kyogen actors. But the play within the play, the player troupe, that was 3 foreigners. So I was the player king in there. And of course, I was in my early 20s when this happened, and that was just wonderful, and it kind of blew my mind, and opened a lot of doors. But acting. We were talking about this offline, but acting comes and acting goes. And I really wanted to stay in Japan, so I ended up getting a job. I was determined. I'd worked really hard on my Japanese, and I was determined to get a job in Japan that was that was not English teaching. English teaching is great. And I've got some dear friends who've made careers of it. But it was just I wanted to do something where I'd be using Japanese day to day, and ideally something that'd be creative. And also needed a visa. So hustled, got close in a few things fell through. And the thing that ultimately panned out is I became the, what I'll jokingly call the all-purpose foreigner at a gaming startup, and small company, but with big ambitions. They've since evolved into an AI company. One of the leading AI companies in Japan, and so that's because I've stayed friends with them. It's interesting to sort of see. It's been interesting to sort of, AI is blowing up right now, but I was starting to get my first window into that world a few years ago. The other 6 degrees of separation I'll share there is that the CEO of the company, who also become a dear friend, and has a cameo in Ike Boys, his best friend is Shinji Higuchi. So this sort of goes to say, like, it's whatever world you work in, like, just be a good person because it will bear fruit. So that was an awesome job, and it would have been awesome job, good people, and obviously I'm telling you, I'm still in touch with a lot of people from that. What I discovered, and if the goal had been to do something creative in Japan, and that was just it, that would have been the dream job. But I was, I quickly found that I was spending all of my free time, making films. And this continued for a couple years, and I realized, okay, I need to, I really need to pursue film. So I got an MFA from New York University, but I continued to return to Japan both to do my films there, but also for work and during the holidays, and then eventually after I graduated. And so I got a job as a producer at an animation studio, and I was using my Japanese, but that was really wonderful because the training I was getting at NYU, that was all live action, but through my work at the animation studio, I was basically getting a second film school in animation, both 2D and 3D. And so did that, and I kind of ended up cobbling things together. The sort of the thing that they say at film school is like, you'll leave with a feature film in your back pocket and a short film, and you send the short film to festivals, and you'll meet producers at festivals and then get your feature film going. It's never actually that easy, but I did hustle my ass off and basically got a variant of that because the MFA thesis film, it really had a wonderful festival run, and won a lot of awards, and that did open the doors that got Ike Boys made. Now I continue to work freelance, and I'm working ahead on several more film projects. I don't know if you call it a day job or not, because it's this is something where you're expected to be working on film anyway. As part of the job is I'm a professor at a film school. So I'm teaching animation and screenwriting and Japanese cinema. The professor life is not for everyone, but it's certainly for me. I get to share something I'm passionate about with equally passionate people, and part of the job description is you're expected to continue to be working on your work. So there's no free lunch there. So that's it's been a long and winding road, but the connective tissue has been a desire to tell stories. These are all things that either enabled, that either directly or indirectly enabled me to be telling the stories I wanted to tell. And that's been the journey so far.
Very, very much the modern day Renaissance man, I guess, is a good way to put it, explaining your story.
Well, shucks, and the funny thing about it is I'm not that old, but I am old enough to sort of like look back at this and be like, oh, okay, so that's, and this is a bit of what I was talking about with Brendan at Anime Boston, is like, okay, it's like I have very specific goals, and of course they don't exactly turn out the way you plan, but gotten pretty darn close. And I don't know, that sure, some of that is luck, but a lot of it, a lot of luck is make your own luck. So I've been very blessed.
Again, hearing your story, it is very inspirational to someone like me, because again, I am someone who is in a lot of productions of stuff like that, and it really does ring true to me, because I worked with so many people who have just that I use the word chutzpah, that gusto, and it really does like even hearing you now, it's like, man, I kind of just want to go out right now and make a movie.
So much of it, really, so much of it is mental. It's the difference between waiting for someone to give you permission and giving yourself permission. That's kind of an easy thing to say, because it's like that decision needs to be iterated over and over and over again. But a lot of it is mental. So yeah, go make that movie.
that is a great way to put it. You don't wait for someone to give you permission, give yourself permission. I love that. That's actually a really good way to put it. So I guess moving on to the other questions we had. One of the ones that, well, I'm going to let Jay ask his, but I actually want to ask this one just to kind of set it down. What was the inspiration behind making the movie's time setting 1999? Because I feel like that was a very specific choice.
Yeah, well, so some of it is tied to the, just the semi-autobiographical nature of the film, in that, it ties roughly into sort of when I came of age, although I'm a bit younger than the characters in the film are, but it's based off of lived experience is part of it. The sort of this more salient, deeper creative reason is, it's just like 1999 was an interesting time. We were concerned about the world ending, and there's multiple layers to it because, there's the Y2K issue and there's the sort of, millennial prophecies issue. But, what a lot of people aren't as aware of in the West is that, like, the prophecies of Nostradamus were really big in Japan. And, there was a lot of, there was the Y2K concern, but there was a lot of just kind of like spooky stuff in the ether in Japan about like there being this kind of biblical Armageddon coming in. And so that just, that's just it's a coming of age film. So, when you're in puberty, a lot of that's just like, is really like, it's kind of like white hot terror of what is coming. Like, oh my gosh, adulthood, what's that going to be? So that just seemed like, that's a whole lot of things all seem to be pointing in the same direction as like growing up. Oh, the world's ending. It's like 1999, the world's ending. Like there's something that had a particular Japanese flavor, but also a, something that certainly resonated in America. And I think maybe the biggest thing is, there's a lot of really scary stuff going on in the world right now, and certainly have been over the past few years. Like between all the talk of climate change and, without stepping on anyone's toes politically, there's just been a lot of ups and downs politically in the world. I'll put it that way.
The most mild way you could possibly put it, yes.
Trying rightly or wrongly to be antiseptic, although I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. You don't have to dig very far to find my political views. And now with AI, and so there's a lot of just kind of dread in the air. And I don't know, I mean, we've dealt with dread before, and I wanted in some small way to put a message out there into the world saying like, hey, we've been here before and we've muddled through, and a lot of what enabled us to muddle through was friendship and kindness. So I wanted to tell a story that said basically friendship and kindness is what will ultimately save the world. And yeah, that was the thought process.
All right.
So I'm going to steal AJ's question here because
Why?
It's a nice question, because it's a good way to spring off of where he just left
How
off,
dare
AJ. You should have asked it first. You had your chance, and you had your chance.
Excuse me. How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you? How dare I
Exactly.
steal your question? Anyways.
Go for it.
Anyways, we'll stop. Okay. So you did mention the movie is semi-autobiographical, and I know AJ was wondering what specific parts would you say are more autobiographical, like such as going on a shady 90s websites to find potential bootlegs, and the weird fan site, like in the there's the scene in the movie where I'm blanking on the main character's name, Quinn Lord's character. He goes on the fan site for the movie, and it's like it's this weird fan blog about this lost movie that's got like no information on it, and it's in like and it's in Japanese and you can't read it. Like that's kind of that's a relatable thing like for a 90s anime nerd, is to just find some random fan site about something that you've never heard of and you can barely understand. So
to be fair though, Jay, that's more relatable to us now because that's basically our show. Hey Jay, does this have any information? Nope.
To be fair, yeah, that is basically about half of what goes into making an episode of our podcast is us and AJ, and by
us and AJ.
Bringing moment, it's late. AJ and I are going onto like old fan sites and just like digging through like the most obscure toku databases to find any information about these random shows, like. Someone
forgot to update their GeoCities.
I've literally had to look at several GeoCities pages before looking up information on stuff.
Oh my
Angel
god!
Fire.
I mean, there was Vanny Nights that one time where we basically had to like go digging in like early 2000s, late 90s internet. I'm just like, man, what is this?
Yeah, well, okay, so, well, I mean, there's a lot to say in answer to that question, but, you know, in specific answer we're talking about there, oh boy, oh yes, I can relate to that, and that early internet, I mean, I discovered so much through that, and so a couple things. So the website in the film, that, so it's inspired by a couple things. So the sort of the version of that for me, I mean, look, there's multiple websites. The one that was my real, sort of poison of choice was a site called Barry's Temple of Godzilla.
Oh man.
And I actually, I've been trying to get into. I exchanged emails with Barry a few times over the years. Been trying to get in touch with him to let him know that there's, he in many ways, it both overt and subtle ways played a role in the creation of this film. So if anyone knows how to get in touch with Barry Goldberg, let me know, because I want to thank him and give him a virtual hug. So that was, kind of both the spiritual and the visual inspiration, but it's a Japanese site in the film. So I actually I asked my best friend who's also a film director and is about my age, like what did he look at in Japan? And he sent me some links, and it was really cool because it was like, it's very much the same vibe of Japanese websites. And like, what's also cool is like, there's a lot of them that are still up and running and like still Web 1.0, and it's, and so I mean, that was fun. Just putting together the fake website for the film, because it's like, the back and forth with, I have a bilingual assistant, Yoshie Fukuda, who, like, I mean, I'm also fluent in Japanese, but because it's my second language, I always work with a native speaker for native Japanese stuff. And so, we're back and forth about the text on the site. I mean, there's a lot of fun Easter eggs just written into the Japanese text. And little things like there's little waving Japanese flags on the site. So like the sort of the lore in there is that it's a site run by an ultra nationalist who believes that like the films of Daisuke Ogata are like part of a coming Japanese imperial renaissance. So
oh boy,
it's there's all kinds of filmmaking is a series of decisions, and you can have too much fun with those decisions sometimes. So that's the website. And the other thing I'll say on there is, I mean, you bet your life, I bought pirated VHS tapes, and not only that, but my pirated VHS tapes they're part of the production design in Sean's bedroom. And I felt comfortable doing that because, it's like I want that choice, but also I have since legitimately bought all of those films since going to Japan. So whatever crime I committed as a child, I have since, I have since done my capitalist penance and, given some money to the creators. but yeah, I mean, so those are some, but there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of overt and subtle things. I mean, so yeah, I mean, Sean is basically me, and Vic is basically my best friend in high school. Now, there was no Japanese foreign exchange student. Miki is she's a composite of various friends of mine who I've met since going to Japan. And you extrapolate out, the other parts of the film. There's plenty of fiction in there. I mean, so like the relationship between Sean and his dad, that's kind of, sort of, like the warmth there is certainly based on my own relationship with my father, but the father himself, like he's a composite based more on on friends of mine. But there are, I mean, like the school in the film, that's the school I grew up at, and there's a lot of little things like that kind of like stone playground where the boys are testing out their powers, like that was the playground I played on in kindergarten and scraped my knee the first time, and like the bunny quilt that my mother made for me, that's on Sean's bed. There's a lot of, and you know what, so some of that is just it's calling in favors to get a film made. The deeper, the real deeper thing going on, I mean, I took a lot of inspiration from American Graffiti, where there's a heck of a lot of George Lucas in that film, in a very similar way. And there's an expression in art, specificity is universal, and I really wanted to make something that it spoke to the experience of growing up, and and friendship and all these things, and I wanted to make a film that people would like. I wanted to make the kind of film that, like, you had a really shitty day and you need something to pick you up, and it's like you like, okay, I'm gonna watch Ike Boys, I really need to feel better. And I was thinking, like, okay, well, if I'm gonna ask someone to sort of like watch my work when they're in a low moment, like, I owe it to them to also make myself vulnerable and be honest with them. And I think by doing that, I stand a better chance of actually making something that will genuinely touch people and make them feel better, because I'm not just feeding them platitudes. I'm showing them what I feel and believe, and showing them who I am. And so, yeah, so I don't know, on a lot of levels, I really did try to put myself into it, and yeah, I mean, it's there.
I guess we could just, as we go through the various aspects of the movie, we can just kind of touch on, how did pre-production go? Just kind of, I guess let's start with casting, because I know we have a couple of questions regarding specific casting elements. So, how did like the casting process go? What were your thoughts when it came to picking certain actors or seeking out certain individuals or whatnot?
Yeah, well, so I guess I would say, casting was so the how the sausage got made with all the sort of back and forth of context, that was challenging, but the end result is one I'm really happy with. I mean, it was a lot of looking for actors who I for various creative and personal reasons felt like the right fit for the roles. Quinn Lord, who plays Sean, the lead character, I knew of him from Trick or Treat and The Man in the High Castle, and it was just a hunch, honestly, but also sort of a good reputation professionally, and so Quinn is the little brother I never knew I had. We're, to a spooky degree, we're just on the same wavelength about a lot of things, and one of the real rewards of this process is we've just become friends who talk regularly about things that have nothing to do with Ike Boys.
Yeah, I remember during Anime Boston, during both the showing and you had a later panel, You guys had such a natural chemistry with each other. I was really surprised. I was really enjoyable though. It did kind of remind me a tiny little bit, not to make ourselves look better. It reminded me a little bit of AJ and I, but I did really enjoy your guys' chemistry. It felt very natural.
Yeah, well, and these are things that this is again where I think there's things that bring people together and we don't fully understand. So then Ronak and Christina play Vic and Miki. Those were auditions, and that was that honestly came down to having good casting directors and just helping us find the right fit. And they in their own ways have also become wonderful friends. Christina, I've hung out with her family back in Tokyo, and multiple times now at this stage, and it's I think it's some of it's fate, some of it's just sort of goodwill put together, but yeah, I mean that was through auditions. Then now some of the bigger names, Billy Zane, that was it's like we really wanted a name for that role, and and it's like and Billy like it just kind of part of it was like it's the sort of the 90s connection, and it was also just a vibe. It was just like, okay, he's the right person for that. He brings the right energy there.
Absolutely.
And so it takes some work to get someone like that, but this is again where we were lucky. Our casting directors had a good relationship with him, and that he was basically made the offer and he said yes. But in order to be in a position to make the offer and say yes, like that took some doing.
It's actually funny you mentioned that, because we were going to ask about Billy Zane, because Jay and I, the moment we saw him in the movie, like when we saw that trailer and we saw him in there, and we're like, all right, what's he doing here?
That's Billy Zane is one of those actors where you see him in anything and that's an immediate, all right, I gotta watch this now. He is definitely a draw for a variety of reasons.
For Jay and I especially.
Yeah.
We're marks for Billy Zane. I'll be honest.
He is. He's a wonderful man in every role. Brings a very interesting energy. That's the mildest way I'll put it. Not to speak ill of the man, of course, but
well, I hope it will delight you to know that same energy is 100 and well, it is 1,000% there in person. He is a trip to spend time with. I think some of it was getting into character and some of it was just kind of the wavelength he was on. But Billy showed up in Oklahoma for the film in a big old Stetson, boots, and it was just he was in Oklahoma and he was going to be a cowboy. And, and it just kind of it went from there. And yeah, conversations with him they will range from painting to music to family to he introduced me to the joy of water teenies.
I remember you told that story.
Sorry. Yeah, well, no, a water teeny is it's a non-alcoholic martini, so you replace the alcohol with water and prepare it just the same. But once you've had it, you'll realize the difference.
He truly seems like honestly, Billy Zane seems like the type of cat that I would love to hang out with.
No, it's fun. It's a bit like taking psychedelics. It's like you commit to going on the journey.
Speaking of the journey, though, I noticed this the moment because Jay said take a look at the main character's dad, Sean's dad, and the moment I saw him, I was like, how did it feel directing John Crichton from Farscape?
Oh boy, Ben is well again like that. I mean, I'm a huge Farscape fan, and so like that's it's a mixture of just like having a hunch that Ben would have the right vibe, but also just like I want that I wanted to play in that sandbox. One of them, I'm going to get a little emotional saying this, but Ben has also since become a friend, and his family is absolutely wonderful. It's but one of the discoveries that I've made on this is works of art don't just happen. I mean, they're made by people, and the sort of the human spirit goes into them, and I think there are many forces that made Farscape what it was. Many people involved, and a lot of it is the fact that it was done in Australia. But the thing I discovered, I mean, a lot of it is Ben's personality really seeped in and flavored that thing. I mean, so Ben is, I mean, first of all, he's a class act. He's a real gentleman. He's like, he has just the right degree of, of humility, but also, faith in himself. But he is just, I don't know, like he's 50 something going on 12. He's a big kid, and like, feed him a Dr. Pepper and he'll just start firing ideas and getting playful and like doing funny voices, and some of the like the like it's he took the script, but like there's some, I mean there's some like some ad libs he did that like some of the best ones are in the film, but there are many others that I hope to put on a Blu-ray someday. He in the best possible way, he's an idea machine, and part of what's great about it is not in a like diva actor you have to wrangle way, in a like fun friend that you're collaborating with, and it's like, I don't know, you're sharing the journey together. Ben is just awesome. He is every movie should have Ben Browder in it, and I want to make many more movies with Ben Browder in them.
Hopefully one of those movies is a Farscape movie, because that needs to come back somehow.
I've told Ben that like this is my mercenary project to get involved in the Farscape revival.
Hey, it's about time. It's been what? It's 20 years since the end of the series, I think, or something like that.
That show was ahead of its time and has aged wonderfully. Having recently rewatched it, so I'm shameless mercenary attitude here. I went in on the ground floor of the follow-up, and I mean, I have a pitch which I shared with him, and I mean, I think without stepping on any toes, I think my pitch was within the ballpark of what various powers that be are pitching. So here's out to you, universe. Make this happen.
Just on Farscape, Jay, we got to review that one of these days.
We should. We really should. That's prime material for us.
Farscape and Stargate.
Well, they guessed on that again. I've seen the entire show 6 times. So.
we'll definitely ring you up when that time comes, because we're definitely gonna do that one of these days.
Again, like ahead of its time, and it's aged really well.
So the question that I was going to ask originally, which I don't think really has much weight anymore, because you basically just told us, but I'll ask it anyways. Was it a challenge to work with actors who spoke very different languages?
Not for me, because I put in so many years of effort to learn Japanese. So Christina, who plays Miki, so she grew up in Tokyo, but she went to an international school, and her parents are fluent in English, so she's fully bilingual. And her kind of pidgin English in the film, that is entirely her just tremendous skill as an actress. And then Sean and Vic, like the whole gag is like they're supposed to be trying real hard but not actually speaking Japanese that well. So that was pretty straightforward. But again, like also the thing with working with Christina, because she and I are both bilingual, is we could we could talk about the nuances of what we wanted there. So the other big one, that would be Yumiko Shaku, who plays the villainous Reiko. And again, that was another one where I've just like that's just such a like I was a fan of her work and I knew she'd be perfect for the role, and then when she was interested and that worked out, I just like that's just that was a gift. And a bigger gift is that, again, like I mean, not to be a broken record, but a lot of these people have become friends. I mean, I've now, you know, hung out with her and her family a bunch, and actually we exchanged text messages earlier today. Yumiko is awesome out there, and filmmakers listening, everyone should work with her. She is super talented and well prepared, and just an awesome, like one of these people. She's beautiful inside and out, and I'm like, okay, you have flaws hidden somewhere, but I'm not sure what they are. Yeah, I mean, so she worked overseas before, but you know, it's mostly that was me, you know, talking to her in Japanese. The thing we did there on, so like, her family came to set, and so like there were, and her husband's bilingual, so there was just kind of a support system there. But the other thing is, you know, we had a bilingual Japanese assistant on set, so that just kind of made everything smooth. But there weren't really any big issues, and again, a lot of it was just creating the right environment and the fact that I've spent, you know, a decade plus in and out of Japan.
All right. Well, to snipe one of Jay's questions, because he took mine. So
Fair.
Were there any particular parts of the production that may have given some hardships, or just incidents that made the production kind of slow or maybe even halt?
Oh boy, howdy. Yes, there were. Yeah, I mean, every film is hard to make. And like that's just filmmaking. It's just like shit goes down on movies. But like some shit went down on Ike Boys. Some of which I don't like even. I can tell you guys offline. But like probably shouldn't say in a public forum. So, but like that level.
Spicy. Now I'm interested. Now you got me. Now you got me curious, man. I gotta know.
Yes. So in addition to the regular, you know, but like, so here are some things that I can share publicly, which are spicy enough. I mean, so we were filming this in you know, the beginning of 2020, and thankfully wrapped right before COVID, which already, I mean, like, look, there's a story there. And like we think I think actually Ben might have had COVID, because that was one of the last things we were filming. And he actually, the scene where he's talking with Miki by the truck, if his face seems a little red there, it's because he had something that was probably COVID. Again, that's how much of a pro he was, is he just kind of like action and switches it on. And then immediately we cut, like, kind of slumped into a chair. So that's one thing. Just how grateful we were that, like, the world was sort of collapsing, and we finished filming right in the nick of time, and then had a whole year of post-production and, you know, animation and everything remotely, which was, you know, crazy, while we're all worrying about dying. But I was like, other things too. So the other thing going on in 2020 is, again, not to get political, but there was a certain administration in the White House, America First. We, you know, so had to get work visas for the Japanese actors. So, you know, so Yumiko Shaku, she's a big name actor in Japan. Like, her face has been up on billboards. And the thing is, you know, the immigration attorney told us it's like absolutely no problem, because it's like, you know, proving a work record, and like that'll just sail right through the visa process, because such a visibly well-established person. Well, less than a month before the start of filming, her visa got declined. You know, and essentially they told us, hire an American.
Oh my God.
So we had to appeal the decision, and if you look at the special thanks, you'll see some pretty crazy names in the credits, and like the favors that we pulled to get like special. I mean, so like the producer of the Graduate, like his name is in the credits, because it's like this like crazy, like it's like, you know, just again, just insane favors we're calling in. And but we have to start filming. And we we actually, in the middle of filming, we shifted the schedule twice, as we kept pulling down to the last sort of possible second to try to get her in the film. And actually we had another actress lined up who was prepared to take the role, and so we got through half of the shoot without knowing whether or not she was actually going to be in the film. And then her visa got approved the morning of her flight that we had already rescheduled 3 times. And came in and met at the airport, and we both immediately started crying because we were so relieved. And then it was and then we had this joke. It's oh, okay, let's not actually get satisfied here, because we still actually have to make. Oh, and but then when we're going out to shoot the finale out in the middle of the Oklahoma. I mean that is shot out in the middle of the Oklahoma prairie, a good hour away from civilization, and in the middle of the winter. So crazy cold weather. There was a ice storm. We had to delay shooting because vehicles got bogged down in mud that froze. This isn't quite a thing that went wrong, but just something spooky was when Reiko's delivering her monologue, the firelight, the middle of the night, a bunch of coyotes started howling. It's just she's so scary that the animals are responding. It's so it was, yeah, I mean, and again, just the general craziness of COVID, and yeah, I mean, there are all kinds of stuff. And again, some really juicy stuff that I don't yet feel comfortable sharing publicly, because yeah, some shit went down.
That is interesting that you mentioned that, but that is one apologies, brain moment. I guess that's a good way to spring off to another question that I had, is that is there anything that you wish that you could have gotten into the movie, but that for various reasons you had to cut? I know you were mentioning there, obviously, with the actress, you might have had to recast her, but was there anything that ended up not working out? Was there anything that you absolutely had to scrap, or didn't quite make it far enough in production to be able to be used, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, there is, and fortunately, the things that aren't in the film that I wish were in the film are the kind of things that they bug me as a director and an artist. But if you ask a third party, none of them are. I can't bring myself as writer and director to admit it, but any normal person would say, "Oh, you're the only one who's ever going to care about that." They're all directory perfectionist things, and it's interesting because it's this is not a movie that's trying to be a Marvel movie. It's it very much embraces the handcrafted aesthetic. And I've had people ask if you'd had a bigger budget, what would you have done differently? And I definitely would not have replaced all of the tokusatsu with CG or anything like that. That is but it's things I would have had more cultists. I would have. I mean, honestly, I would have. I'm a perfectionist. I would have there's scenes where, just because of the nature of the schedule, it was 2 to 3 takes, get what I needed, and then move on, and just need to get the next shot. And there are times where doing 5 or 6 takes and sort of letting actors really sort of lose themselves in it, interesting things can emerge. And fortunately, the schedule was done in such a way that they're really emotionally important scenes. I was able to do that, but I'm greedy. I want to do that with everything. There's a whole additional part of the fight between the boys it's actually storyboarded, where they crashed into the school gymnasium and have a big fight where they're like throwing basketballs at one another and exploding them in the air, and it's a super fun scene, but it's just time and money. And then there's just a lot of like directory stuff, like there's plenty of beautiful beautiful Oklahoma footage in there, but like with more time and money, like there's even more of that I would have liked. So again, I'm really fortunate to say, like, it's the movie I wanted to make, and and sort of it's the movie I wanted to make, and the things that aren't in it that I wish were in it are just more of what's there, or in my view, better versions of what's there. But that's a privileged and lucky position to be in.
I think that's a good way to sort of explain it, is that you as a writer-director, it bothers you, but somebody who isn't necessarily. Like me, where I do a lot of kind of like writing and for scripting and stuff like that, I have a very same mentality where I would like to put stuff like that in there, and if I can't get it to work, or if I can't get it in there, I'm going to be bothered by it. But somebody who might not necessarily be as attached to the project, or somebody who's sort of a third party, they're going to be like, it's not that big of a deal. Although, I'll give you this one, the big epic Doomsday Cult having like 6 guys total. To be fair, that's basically like every Tokusatsu villain group, is that they have like 6 guys max beyond the Monster of the Week, so...
I mean, you know what? I'll give them this much. At least they were 6 different guys, unlike most Tokusatsu, where they're just 3 guys that they mirrored.
That is true.
Watch, but watch the fight scene closely, guys. The same cultist may or may not die multiple times.
That's
fine.
fine.
The best part is that I could literally be talking about a Tokusatsu from the 70s or Tokusatsu from last week.
I know.
It's
Some things never
so
change.
right.
And that is part of where it's like, if I had had more money, it wouldn't really have gone to things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been more enhanced versions of what's there. Like, because again, like the whole point is to do something in that, in that spirit and aesthetic.
I do believe, though, in a way, having those sorts of limitations does still keep true to the spirit of Tokusatsu. Because at the end of the day, and Jay and I know this very well, Tokusatsu, even from its inception, they work on a budget of 2 yen and a ham sandwich. So even if something
and a whole lot of ingenuity and passion.
So even if some things to some may come off as that, as Tokusatsu fans, we appreciate that, because we're like, you know what? That's the spirit right there. That's the true spirit, and I appreciate it, honestly.
Well, I mean, well, thank you. The analogy I always give is pro wrestling, which
oh my god,
which actually I was not a fan of growing up, but I've become a convert in my 30s. Actually, one of the producers on the film, he turned me on to it, and it's the exact same thing. Like, pro wrestling fans don't watch pro wrestling ironically. Like, they, like, sure, objectively, there's a lot of stuff that's ridiculous about it, but you invest yourself in this heightened world, and boy, is it fun.
It's so funny you say that, because I specifically, Jay dabbles in it, but I specifically am a wrestling fan. I've always have been. And, seeing Tokusatsu and seeing pro wrestling, and it's like, man, these just work together so well. And like you say that, honestly, it validates my feelings really well.
It really does.
So Alex Palmer, if you're listening, one of the producers in the film, he sort of like, I introduced him to Tokusatsu, and he's like, I think you would like this, and like, that's since become, like, when I'm back in Oklahoma and have some time, that's a few things make me happier than an afternoon with Alex drinking beer and watching wrestling.
This wasn't the question originally planned, but what companies you feel for?
Well, Well, yeah. And again, I need to give the caveat here that I'm to use religious terms. I am a novice in this world. I'm certainly following the faith, but I'm being trained in it. So let me, I'm giving the opinions of a newbie. Well, look, I mean, WWE, it's the stalwart. It's been there forever, but AEW is doing some pretty cool stuff. So
I said it before, but I feel so validated in my belief that tokusatsu and wrestling are the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It's great. I have the biggest smile on my face. I'm not gonna lie. So
you would not believe how many times we've had a similar conversation over the years.
I mean, I was gonna say because in our show, the podcast that we do. Funny enough, the podcast you're on right now. So we actually do make mention a lot about wrestling. You know, we use terminology of wrestling. We use a lot of stuff like that because it really does, correlate so well to that. So to hear someone else say that, it makes me smile.
Great mind.
So to go to a question that was planned, which is not something we usually do. So outside of like the obvious, like Godzilla and Gamera and Ultraman, were there any specific inspirations for certain things like for suits or even effects? Because as we know in Tokusatsu, certain effects can be related or pinned to certain shows. Like, Ultraman has its specific sound effects, so does Rider. So were there any specific inspirations for those kinds of things within the movie?
Yeah, well, so it was really important to me that our character designs in it, that they not be like I didn't want them to be homages to specific pre-existing characters. What I really like, all of the great Tokusatsu designs, like they're based off of silhouette theory. It's like you can recognize them by their shadow, and they're really beautifully designed that way. And like my goal is I wanted to have characters that it's like if you had like a police lineup, like that the characters, the fantastical characters in Ike Boys, like they would fit in with the lineup. Like they wouldn't look like they were. It wouldn't be like, oh, like it was clearly inspired by Ultraman Taro or whatever. But it's like it's like, but it would feel like it's like they belong in the family tree. And so like I'm a concept artist, Sean Bricknell, like we were having initial conversations and I said, so like the goal, like the key word here is iconic. And I remember him just kind of like taking a breath and like, it's like, that's a big word. But so, we looked at a lot of references, but then it was honestly, it was like taking elements, but really then just like playing and trying to create our own thing. So, there's little things like, like Mecha Sean, like, we kind of theorize like that, like Sean was probably into knights as a little boy. So, that's why he's got like a grill over his face and kind of has this like knight's helmet look as opposed to, the Ultraman mouth, so there's, little touches like that are meant to be just sort of like their own thing. So, the Kaiju Vic, like the goal there is, there aren't a whole lot of Kaiju inspired by Komainu, the guardian dogs at temples. There's King Seesaw, but that's kind of, Seesaw is different. So we took that and then threw in some buffalo because it's based in Oklahoma. And this may or may not make sense, but the old gods, the conversation there is, and we're saying like, these aren't actually gods. These are like cosmic demons, basically, that sort of like prey on bad feelings. And so actually, we had a long conversation about depression and what that feels like. And, we were talking about like this thing like looming over you and like crushing you down. We're like, okay, well, what if we visualize that? And then, it's a little, so like, they're kind of like their big long smoky tails touching the ground. Like that's that's tornadoes again with Oklahoma. So it was a lot of sort of, I mean, a lot of it was looking at looking at the different designs from Tokusatsu history and breaking it, like, why does this work the way it works? And a lot of what it came down to is it's a mixture of taking something mythological and then taking something geometric and kind of like finding the most iconic parts of both, and then just kind of, it's like then whole lot of fun and a whole lot of playfulness. So it was trying to sort of get into the same headspace, but then do our own thing with it.
All right. So I believe that's all of the questions we had in regards to the movie directly, but I guess this is more targeted towards you in regards to the movie. What were your feelings on sort of the finished project, and more importantly, the overall reception the movie's gotten?
Yeah, well, so look, it's making a movie is really, really hard. And I said before that, like, and it's the film I wanted to make. And that is a real gift. So the films that have really touched me and like made a difference in my life, like many times, like I encountered them years after they were made, and like in a wildly different context that they were created for. Like I'm a big believer in the principle of great art always finds its audience. Actually, I'll take away the great. Art always finds its audience. Because it's like art is it's a tool made by people to help other people understand the world. So what I'm getting at here is I know how much love and care went into the film. Spoiler warning, a lot. And so I know that, like, that, again, to get a little bit mystical, like, I've put that vibration out there and it's going to harmonize with the people it's meant to harmonize with. So on some level, I'm kind of, the sort of whatever response I get, like that's just kind of gravy. It's like, I just know, I know what went into the film, and so I know that's going to touch the people it's meant to touch on the timetable that it's meant to touch them. That have been said, like, validation is always welcome, and is always appreciated. And so, yeah, I mean, like, been pretty darn lucky. I mean, we had a world premiere at Fantastic Fest, which is awesome. Particularly coming out of COVID, and a wonderful couple of screenings at the Busan Fantastic Film Festival in Korea. And our U.S. distributor, Shout Factory, I mean, like, they're really, like, you couldn't ask for a better fit to get the film out there to its core audience. And it's a gift now. I mean, like, things like Anime Boston are starting to happen. Like, I always kind of, just sort of knowing what the fandom's like, I always sort of viewed this as a long-term game. Of course, like, the initial splash is great, but the splash ripples, and this kind of film, like, it's a word of mouth kind of thing. Like, it will find some of its people up front and then more of them over time. Obviously I can, I and other people involved can push and hustle to play a role in that, but some of that is just organic. And some of that too is that sure, I'll continue to bust my ass to promote the film, but I'm going to reserve larger and larger chunks of my ass to bust on the next film. So yeah, long way of saying I'm really grateful for the reception we're getting. I mean, 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, I wasn't predicting that. But the bigger thing is, I don't know, like, I know what went into it, and I know that's gonna reach the people it's meant to reach when it's meant to reach them.
So I think I'll allow Jay to ask his next question, actually, because it segues perfectly. So, Jay.
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit there, but what's next for you up on the schedule? You said you're planning, you're saving chunks of busting your ass for your next movie. So do you already got some ideas in the works? Because I know not. I would hope if you're watching this interview, you've already seen the movie, and I know we've already spoiled some elements of the movie, but of course there's the little sequel hook at the end where news of the events of the movie reaches the director of the anime in the movie, and he decides, well, now I've got to make the sequel. So do you actually have a plan for a sequel? And if not, what's next on your schedule for your next film?
Well, yeah. So the answer is yes. I mean, there is a very specific plan for a sequel that as with all great sequels, I'll aim big. It takes the story and then pushes it in a big different direction. It kind of Ike Boys is sort of aiming north, and then the sequel pushes it off west. There's definitely a plan there. The sequel involves the kids being a little bit older, so it won't be right away, but it is definitely something I want to do. There is a very specific story there. I worked a lot in animation, and I'm working very hard on an animated project, which that and a couple other things that are taking a lot of my time I can't talk about. I'll say that I'm a big never outgrew my dinosaur phase, so let me let me throw that out there. That is most definitely a part of it. Other thing I'm working on that is this would be smaller but just as heartfelt is there's cat people and there's dog people, and I'm a cat person among cat people to a kind of a very, very spooky degree. I have actually, since childhood, I've never had a cat of my own, but people's cats tend to adopt me. Actually, during the pandemic, the apartment I was renting, one of my ways of, blowing off stress is I would just sort of take long walks through the neighborhood to decompress from just all of the general nuttiness going on. And in the same neighborhood, a group of no less than 7 cats, these are all cats with happy homes and owners who loved them and fed them. So these weren't strays in need of shelter. These are just outdoor cats who had big yards and were able to see nutty tall people walking by. These cats figured out that whenever I walked by, if they ran up to me, I would basically stop and give them an unlimited amount of attention. And this escalated to the point where I befriended their owners, and I sort of became a figure, apparently a bit of a beloved figure in the neighborhood of the cat man is back. And so what I'm getting at there is I don't know, cats and I have a thing going, and there have been some great dog movies, but there has yet to be a really great cat film. And in particular, there has yet to be a great cat film that captures the kind of the mystical connection that I think a lot of cat owners describe. So I'm really pushing on that. So that would be I call it's a love story between a lonely young woman and a cat, and it starts out set in Japan, set in the Japanese countryside, and it sort of starts out quote unquote normal and gradually gets more and more fantastical as it goes. So that's the most sort of grounded, feasible of the things I'm working on, but it's still, you can probably even read between the lines there that it brings the crazy, and we'll take some. It'll take its own kind of effort because cats do not take direction.
No. Well, that does sound interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to that whenever that gets made or gets finished, I suppose.
Well, again, I am nothing if not a I don't know, hard worker. So sooner rather than later.
Well, that goes on to another question. So this would be one of our last two before we wrap up here for tonight. So any words of inspiration for those watching or listening to this saying, man, I wish I could do what you do?
Oh, well, I mean, I've kind of, kind of said it before. I mean, so much of this is mental. Like, there's nothing actually that special about me. I've just been stubborn and kept at it. I mean, learning Japanese was nothing if than just a lot of consistent time applied to the same goal, and that's the same thing for filmmaking. I have a little bit of talent that I've just applied over and over and over again, and then next thing I know, I think actually outstripped some people with more talent but less chutzpah than me. So it's really just it comes down to deciding to do something and then sticking to it. Let me throw in, the other thing I'll say is your human qualities add up in ways you're not expecting, and I mean, so much of it does come down to being a good person. I mean, I've kept talking about like the friendships that I've formed with members of the cast, and I'm going to get really emotional saying this, but you know, something I found particularly with Quinn and Ben and Yumiko, is discovering that, you know, the fact that I sort of loved the works they're in, like that in so many ways was because of who they actually are as people and what they, I don't know, like the sort of what they brought to the works they did. And then, so I really like the fact that we become friends. That's not a lucky happenstance. That's, you know, I do believe that's, you know, our sort of our human energies connecting. So I don't know, making films, it's not about like becoming someone you're not, or like trying to become a certain kind of person who you think will be, you know, a better artist or more successful. It's, you know, be who you are and be a loving, good person, and that'll carry you a long way.
That's a great way to put it, actually. That's a very good way to put it. So finally, what is your favorite Tokusatsu show?
Oh boy. Well, okay. So, because if I pick the favorite, it would have to be a movie, and it's a controversial choice. So I not saying best, I'm saying favorite. So it would be it would be Godzilla versus Space Godzilla.
Oh, oh my goodness.
Oh wow.
And again, I realize that is a controversial, like both at home in Japan and abroad, that is a controversial choice. And like, sure, I mean, I get it, but it touches my happy place. That's the mood. Like when I'm in a shitty mood, like that will make me not in a shitty mood anymore. And you know, what's even funnier is that like I have a group of a half dozen friends in Japan, we call ourselves the Space Godzilla Club, and we're like, we're all filmmakers, and we've sort of found one another. We're like, you know, the few, the proud, the Space Godzilla lovers. And that's another case of like, you know, we have, you know, despite all the odds, connected across time and oceans. So I don't, you know, there is no accounting for taste.
Well, it was definitely a surprise.
yeah, definitely. I was expecting like, God, I was expecting one of the really weird ones, like Godzilla versus Megalon. I was expecting that, not Space
Look,
Godzilla
Godzilla versus Megalon is cinema.
It is. That movie's great too. I like. You know what?
That is also pretty much guaranteed to rescue me from a foul mood.
That's fair. But no, I do like the way you phrase it as favorite, not best. That's a phrase that I like to use when I refer to you know, I really like this. Is it the greatest? No. Is it even objectively good? Not really. But I like it.
That's why I like Final Wars so much.
Oh! Wow. Okay. Well, that's a mic drop right there.
Is it?
I do not agree with him on that sentiment.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, in fairness, it's been a while since I've seen it.
I love Final Wars. It's got the lobster. Look, Godzilla kicks Anguirus into King Caesar, and King Caesar Pele kicks Anguirus. How do you not love that, Jay?
It's because it's like it gets boring after
No,
a
it doesn't.
while.
You just don't know how to enjoy it.
Boy, I'm gonna get off this call and I'm just gonna rock out to that funky end credits music.
That music is pretty good.
Yeah, I'll give you that one.
I will tell you one thing about Megalon, though. Apparently, the house with all the stairs in that, apparently it still exists in Tokyo, and yeah, and that's a pilgrimage I need to go on this at some point.
If it's for sale, I'll buy it. I'll have the house with many stairs. Like I said, I guess we all have our different favorite Godzillas. I mean, Jay's is Godzilla's Revenge, obviously.
Shut up. Die.
Hey, you know what, man? No judging, you know? Maybe you like fuck his name, Bagaban, or whatever the fuck his name is. Whatever. Wait, no. Ah, shoot. Now I'm actually trying to remember the monster's name. It's like.
Oh yeah. Golly, why is this? And this is failing me too. Not Gabara.
Was it Gabra? Oh yes, it was.
I think so.
Yeah. Who, and the irony of this is that he got so beautifully and spookily reborn in Singular Point, which, I mean, Singular Point is honestly, that's become one of my favorite Godzilla things, period. I think that's just, Singular Point is just the cat's pajamas.
I have yet to see that, and I'm gonna have to change that pretty soon.
Yeah, you are gonna have to change that pretty soon. It's like that's one of the rare ones that I can recommend to my non Tokusatsu fan friends. It is really great stuff.
Well, it would be great for Jay because he is part of the Gabra fan club, obviously.
Shut up.
Jay, you're the first one to buy his SH Monster art.
He doesn't have one.
Yeah, but you made one. Passion and love. You know what, dude? If they ever make one, I will buy that for you, just so you can have it.
I know you do
just
it.
So you can,
you
just
jerk.
so it can stare at you while you sleep.
But it's better than that. You can put it into all kinds of sexy poses. So it's like, just Gavra doing the Burt Reynolds.
Oh my goodness!
You know?
Oh my.
Oh no!
I could just really hurt Jay and just like send it to him, super glued, hitting the gritty. I can totally picture myself doing that too. I don't know why. So
the worst part is I know you're not joking. If you could,
I
you would.
actually would. Look, I would be the worst. I would be the world's worst millionaire because I wouldn't even use it on anything for me. I would just do the dumbest things imaginable.
You would commission SH Monster Arts to create.
Nah, bro. I would just be like, hey, yo, Toho, y'all got that suit lying around? I got someone who would love it. Oh, that'd be amazing. Now I gotta wonder if they still have it around there somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure they do. They guard those things. So, the dream is alive, is what I'm saying. It's
I mean, hey, Jay. I mean, pilgrimage to Japan. Let's go. You get to see one Godzilla dude in person. I'm gonna just write your name and be like Gabra. There you go.
This is gonna become a fucking running
It
joke.
Is. I'm gonna just like Phil and Charlie. I'm gonna have to Photoshop you with like Gabra on a T-shirt.
I am proud to have played a role in this running joke's inception.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll get the guy who I commissioned for those profile pictures. I'll just get him to do that with you and Gabra. I will just. You know what? I probably could. He'd probably be totally down for it. He'd be like, "Hey, yo, bro, let's go."
He would.
I am so sorry that this went off the rails so bad.
To be fair, this is how literally every episode of our show ends.
I take it as a positive sign that in some small way my film could have led to this moment of genius.
It is like Jay said. We just kind of go off the rails after the topic's done. It's just a party now.
Yeah.
So I guess we could say it like this. Do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
Henshin.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
Simple yet effective.
Yeah.
In all aspects of your life, Henshin.
You know, I never even got to ask, what's your favorite Kamen Rider series?
Oh, Amazon.
Yo!
Yeah.
You know what? That's impressive because most people nowadays don't even know the word Showa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And also has easily the best theme song.
I love Amazon.
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
Out of the Showa ones, hard agree. At least top.
So does that mean you're gonna get his actor for Ike Men?
Ooh. No comment, but you heard my excited.
That'd be incredible. You know what? If you could somehow find Super One for us too. If you could somehow find that guy, I don't know where he's at, but
The dream.
I don't think Super One would be very happy if people
Not
found
right
him.
now.
All things considered, but
how long can you get away with it, Jay?
what was it? 2017.
Jesus.
I don't know what is the statute of limitations on embezzlement. Asking for a friend, of course.
Yeah. Well, I have some friends who are lawyers, so maybe offline we can investigate these.
Well, Jay. I mean, embezzlement and fraud statute of limitations is one thing. What's the statute of limitations on pissing off the Yakuza? Exactly.
Yeah. Never.
Yeah.
So being said, we do thank you, Eric, for coming on and enjoying and, you know, obviously giving us this interview, but also putting up with our shenanigans this whole time. It has been a joy to have you on.
It will, honestly, the pleasure was mine. Thank you, guys.
So with that, we're going to be putting this episode to a close. So I have been AJ. That has been Jay.
I didn't even get a chance to use my opening joke, and you know what? I didn't even need
Remember
it.
that time Jay had an opening joke about comic books?
Yeah. I remember.
You have to say which time, Jay. It's the status quo flip.
That's your bit. It's not mine.
I just stole your bit right now.
Well, you know what? I'm stealing the end of this episode.
Well, there you go. So, that being said, we'll see you guys for next time. Bye-bye.